Thank you for attending. Morning everybody, and thank you to members of the public and press for attending. Just some housekeeping. There's no planned fire alarms this morning. If the fire alarm does sound, all attendees are to exit the building as swiftly as possible, and TVCA staff members will direct you to the nearest safest exit to the muster point as well. There's a couple of new faces in, so it might be worth people just going around introducing themselves and in what capacity they're here today. So I'm Mandy Porter, I'm the chair of the Audit Committee and a cabinet member for Dalton Borough Council. I'll go to my right, Jeanette.
I'm Jeanette McGarry, I'm the interim monitoring officer.
Claire Brown, governance officer.
Hi, I'm Angela Hart, head of performance risk and assurance, and I'll be presenting the risk report today.
I'm Colin Maloney, the Statutory Scrutiny Officer, and I'll be presenting the draft memorandum of understanding.
Morning everyone, I'm Andrew Evans, I'm an independent member.
Ian Robson, also an independent member.
Councillor Peter Grogan, representative from Redcar Cleveland Borough Council.
Councillor Nyland is from Stockton Borough Council.
Morning, Moss Body, Hartlepool Borough Council.
Hi, I'm Nicky Walker, I'm Executive Member for Finance, Middlesbrough Council.
Morning, David Robinson, Director of Audit for TIA, who are the internal auditors.
Mark Ritter, Senior Manager with the External Auditors, Ernst & Young.
Claire Mellons, one of the audit partners from Ernst & Young.
And Jo Orange from Section 73 officer.
Thank you. And online, Stephen, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair. Stephen Reid, Audit Engagement Partner.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. So moving on to the main agenda, just before that I'll just acknowledge that we did have, prior to this meeting, there were some questions received from members of the public. Just to acknowledge, there were questions received from members of the public and in line with the public participation protocol. Written responses to all of the questions will be provided within 10 clear working days of meeting and will be published on the TVCA website as well. Thank you. So moving on to the agenda item number 1, do we have any apologies of absence at all?
Councillor Marcy.
Thank you. Any other apologies at all to note? No? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest today? No? As always, please just, as we go through the meeting, if there are any, please just declare them at that point. Thank you. Agenda item number 3, the minutes in the action tracker. So it's to approve as a record for the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of December. And we were also advised just to review the progress made against the identified actions. So if there's anything that you want to follow up on the actions at all?
Chair?
Yes, certainly.
On page 14 of the pack, in the tracker, it mentions the Chief Legal Officer to liaise with a member of Hartlepool outside of the meeting. Obviously that they are both not in this committee anymore. Can that be removed or updated, please?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it could just be updated to accordingly. Yeah, that's fine.
Just noticed that obviously they're both not in these committees anymore.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments or questions on the previous minutes and the tracker at all? No? Can we accept the minutes as true record? Are we all? Can we agree them? Yeah. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4 is the Audit and Governance Skills Audit report. So that's to receive the report from Jeanette yourself. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is really a skills audit for members of this committee so that we can have an understanding of your strengths, gaps, so that we can enhance the effectiveness of the committee. We can provide some personal development for committee members, strategic planning, and build a balanced team. So you'll see that there are 2 recommendations here, Chair. Firstly, to endorse a proposed model of self-assessment and to approve the skills audit questionnaire. And secondly, to agree the self-assessment and skills audit exercise. And the reports should come back to will come back to a future meeting. We're hoping that the results will come back, anonymised results will come back in May. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Jeanette, and thank you for bringing the report to this committee. Does anybody have any questions regarding the report and the self-assessment and what's being proposed there from Jeanette? Yes, certainly.
Thanks, Chair. So in terms of timescales, when does this need to be completed by?
We'd like it to be completed by the end of March, and then that gives us a chance to analyse the results that we receive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at all regarding that report? As I said, thank you for bringing that report, Jeanette. Are we happy, therefore, that based on what the recommendations are within the report, that we endorse the proposed model and agree the self-assessment? We're all happy to do that? Yeah, we've got the nods. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Jeanette. Agenda item number 5 is a constitution insurance framework. Again, that's a report from yourself, Jeanette. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there's quite a lot involved within this report. So firstly, we'd like members to comment on the proposed approach to developing the constitutions. Secondly, to feedback on the draft article decision making, and then to provide feedback on the draft public code of conduct, which can be found on page 48 of this pack, and also to consider the draft contract procedural rules, which can be found on page 55 of this pack, and then finally to approve the approach to the single assurance framework. And this is something that the Ministry of Housing, MHCLG, is requiring authorities to work towards, and it will provide us with a clear framework, particularly with programme and project management. Thank you, Chair.
Excuse me. Thank you for that, Jeanette. Obviously, there's a lot of detail within these reports, so just open it up to initially any questions from anybody on the committee at all. Yes, certainly.
On page 35, 3 points, it mentions about the 500k threshold, you know, that all the local authorities, which is a little bit lower than the majority of the other combined authorities. And obviously it's stated in page 40 that with enhanced monitoring and, let me just get to the page, enhanced monitoring that goes along with it. Do we have the capacity to enable all that enhanced monitoring, reporting processes to ensure compliance?
Yeah, we're confident that we do have processes and capacity to do that. The financial ceiling of £500,000 is for all key decisions, and that was considered, I think, back in December as well, so it's coming back to you to finally consider that and to decide whether or not you want to support that and endorse that. But key decisions will be published on the forward plan, so that members of the public and our partners can see what up and coming key decisions are ahead during the course of the year. So we're hoping that will provide a far more helpful framework and effective, and will provide even better governance than we've had before.
Thank you.
I've also got a few other points, please, Chair. It mentions on page 36 about the FOIs and how many have been asked of the authority. Are we any closer to an online guidance, so like general questions can be answered without actually involving the officers to outwardly go through? Are we any closer to something there?
Yeah, so when we receive FOIs, if they relate to some information that we've already published on the website, then we don't need to go into too much detail. We would advise the questioner of the link within our website. You're absolutely right, yeah.
Thank you. Did you have another one?
I've got a couple. I'm sorry, I'm being a good boy.
You know, it's all right. Do you want to do them? That's fine.
No, I'm happy to go through, because the different ones, they're not always related. Obviously, in the document there, it mentions regarding section 5.2. Any action, say for instance, if the mayor was not available either through sickness or out of the country or uncontactable, it says delegated to a deputy mayor. We don't have a deputy mayor, do we? So who would take authority?
The Deputy Mayor is currently Councillor Alec Brown, so it's on a rotation throughout the LA leaders.
Oh, so it's on a rotation, is that a year by year rotation?
Yes, year by
I
year
wasn't
rotation.
sure there, maybe it should state whoever's at the time.
Yeah, I think that's
there, yeah, just to clarify that, that's all. There's a few bits that's missing as well. On page, there was something there, there was something missing, and I just found it now. Policy plus something there. Page 66. We got competitive flexible procedures, but there's just blanks. There should be something there, I'd imagine. There's no explanation. Obviously, you've got open procedures and things like that. A lot. I'm not going to go through every single one, but the spelling mistakes and all sorts that are within all this here. There's a lot of things that need to be just cleaned up and like filled in. 66 of all pack.
Yeah. Thank you. I will.
Maybe if we get a few bits and pieces done, and then we might, if it can be fully looked at and implemented, maybe we could look at that at the next meeting and just to okay it. It's up to everyone else. Maybe it's a suggestion just to tweak to make sure the tweaks are all ironed out.
Yeah, I think that's in relation to the contract procedure rules, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will share that. Yeah, thank you.
Any other ones?
No.
Thank you. The one I've got is obviously there's been a lot of talk here before around vexatious members or members of the public or whatever. Just wondering if you can just update the committee on the vexatious policy that's included really, and just kind of give us anything that has changed or is different within that policy, because it has come up quite often in previous meetings, so it would be useful for the committee just to have that brief.
Yeah,
that's page.
The public code of conduct is starts at page 48.
48, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And this policy was drawn up by my predecessors, but is in line with practice undertaken by other combined authorities. So we're confident that this will help the authority and members of the public to understand the kinds of behaviours that are expected on both sides, if you like. And we'd like members to consider it, happy to take comments, but it is in line with governance, and we are trying to strengthen our approach to governance.
Thank you. I was just on the introduction there, just say insert link. Is that to insert after it's been approved? Or?
Yes, that's to make sure that there is a web link. So that it's completely transparent and available.
After this policy. Thank you. Anybody else got any other questions at all or comments? No? Nikki,
Chair, I think previously had the list of what might be considered reasonable conduct, including saying things to the press, which was totally unacceptable. So I think we need to be reasonable about what was unreasonable conduct as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be balanced.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? No? So Jeanette, obviously there's a couple of things there just to sort of fine tune as such. So at what point would it be able to come back to the committee for just the sort of a final sign off? Obviously within the recommendations I think it was to progress, was it going to Cabinet from here, I think?
Cabinet would like to receive feedback from the Audit and Governance Committee, yes.
So I mean, are people happy for us to provide, for Jeanette to provide the feedback, but then we'll just get the revised update circulated when some of those minor things are updated, and are we happy to do so? And that fed back to Cabinet? Thank you for that, thank you. Thanks everybody. So agenda item number 6 is the Memorandum of Understanding for Audit and Governance, and that's yourself, Connor, I think? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee. I will take the paper largely as read, but I'll give some context as to the purpose of the Memorandum of Understanding. There is in existence something called the Scrutiny Protocol, which is non-statutory guidance, but there's an expectation that scrutiny committees will adopt it in full. As part of that, there is a significant link to the Audit and Governance Committee under Principle 18, and the intention of this Memorandum of Understanding is to create a stronger link between the two committees, because existing relationships are very limited. You work side by side, but there is no integration. So the draft Memorandum of Understanding was developed with both the chairs of the committee and has really been received by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who are happy for it to be submitted to yourselves today. Obviously it's subject to annual review as stated within it, but the request today is for you to consider its suitability. If there are any amendments provided back to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, it will be redrafted and then returned to you after they've considered them. Or if there is no intention to provide any amendments, approve it, and following the meeting we will get it signed by both chairs and placed into the terms of reference. So I'll pass it over to you, Chair, if there are any questions.
Thank you for that, Conor. And as Conor said, you know, I did meet with Conor and the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well, and we sort of went through some of the detail of how we would like things to probably work going forward, and that there is more crossover between the two areas. So it is again for that transparency and just to make sure that there's that flow of things as well between the two committees, because sometimes we might see things and they might see things, but there isn't always that flow of coordination as such between the committees. So it's very much around that. But if anybody's got any questions around the process and how we you know, any comments or anything, happy to take those. Yeah, Councillor, thank you.
Thank you. It was just a brief point on page 87, Chair, of our pack, regarding the joint working and value for money. It was just a point of clarity around where's the decision around who would take the lead on such matters. So where there's a value for money query raised by auditors, whatever it might be, which committee would take the lead? I appreciate it says that we're all working, but depending upon which committee, who would take the lead on those? Where's the committee's decision making on that?
So if it's received by the committee itself, so your existing terms of reference will still remain the same. This is effectively appended to the terms of reference. So you'll still maintain your own remits, your roles and responsibilities. And I believe that would itself typically lie with yourself as the audit committee. But obviously the intention is more. So Scrutiny have introduced thematic leads to shadow the portfolio areas. So we have a shadow for finance resources and inward investment. So if it were the case that you received a report and there was something that materially would benefit from a deep dive, you could then share it to the committee. They can consider it and decide if they want to review it. But principally any and all existing finance for the committee will just remain the same.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat. Any other questions at all? I think it will improve the collaboration between everybody going forward, and I think it's certainly a welcomed addition to the current structure that we've got. And you know, I think it was welcomed, you know, like say by Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well. So I think it will provide that link between everybody. So I can only see, hopefully, as a positive relationship going forward, and that transition between the two committees hopefully will strengthen those working relationships as well. Thank you. So I think we'll just go back to the recommendations on it. So Conor, do you just want to move the recommendations to the report? Thank you.
Of course. So recommendation A was to review the draft Memorandum of Understanding and consider its suitability for adoption. And B was split into 2 points of: one, if there were amendments identified, submit the proposed changes to the ONS committee for consideration and approval. But my understanding of which here would be point 2, if no amendments are required, approve the Memorandum of Understanding and incorporate it as an appendix to the committee's terms of reference.
Thank you for that. Are we happy to accept the recommendations within the report? Yeah, accepted. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Conor. Thank you. Agenda item number 7, the internal audit actions update report. So I think Angela, is that yourself? Thank you.
It is, thank you. So there is a cover report on top of the tier that David's going to present, and it just highlights some of the outstanding actions. We are very aware that some of these are aged, so we've had a really good deep dive at the end of last year, just to review for the validity and obviously working with tier on what we can shut down. Very accepting that some of them weren't raised by tier. There's some old RSM actions in there. So we're working through them. We've got some really good action plans that sit behind them, monitored and looking at closing down probably, I think most of them at the end of March. So we've made sure that they're all listed on there. Is there any questions with regards to the cover report before I hand over to David?
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the cover report at all? Yeah, Councillor?
Yeah, Angela, so the end of March we are looking to hopefully have them actions and
yes.
all of them, yeah?
Yeah.
All that's in that.
Yeah, there was a few things like, for instance, management reporting were very heavily based on a system rather than process, so we've reviewed and made sure that they're really relevant and the process is looking after that rather than a system.
Right.
Thank you. And I think it's good just from the committee's perspective to see that the actions, the plan and the delivery dates are on there, which was something that we'd asked for previously, so thank you for getting that updated, and I think it just gives us that clear snapshot, which is what we were looking for in terms of where things are at and sort of the deliverables and the dates on those, so it is much clearer. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments on the actual cover report? No? So we move on to David for the actual TIA report. Thank you.
Chair. Yeah, so the follow-up, just in case anybody doesn't know, which is look at the recommendations that have been made by internal audit. We don't look at external audit for their own process, and just establish where you are with those recommendations. If they've been implemented, we ask for evidence. If they haven't been implemented, we ask for an updated position and potentially revised due date if that due date is passed. So as Andrew mentioned, a few of the recommendations were the old RSM ones, and then we're coming on to our recommendation that we made last year as well. So in total we followed up on 28 recommendations. So at the time of doing the audit, just backtracking a little bit, we were late to starting all the work for the year, so we started about October. So we did this sort of mid-year follow-up in November, December. So as at that point, 12 have been implemented and there were 16 outstanding. The 16 outstanding on pages 99 onwards of the pack. A number of different areas which are covered a bit more detail probably in the cover paper, and as Angela mentioned, there are quite a few, particularly in performance monitoring, where the response is systems based, or the follow-up actions are systems based, so that potentially would implement quite a raft of recommendations in one go. So we've got sort of procurement to pay, grants, management information, some GDPR ones in there as well. So that, to reiterate, that was at a point in time in December. The year-end follow-up I'm carrying out in March, I think it's a week after next, but it's in March. So Councillor Grogan, picking on your point, yeah, we'd like to think at that point a lot of these will have been cleared off. But I'll also then be looking at some recommendations which weren't on here, which were too new at that point to do in that one. So some of the recent audits we did back in the last year and earlier this year maybe will come in. So might be a few new ones on there as well, but hopefully more taken off and coming on. And then that'll come to the next committee meeting, May, I think, whatever it is. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for David at all? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think from memory all of the 16 I think said implemented or were in progress that just missed the original date. Does that give you confidence that when you come to March that all of those 16 will be then satisfactory and moved to green and completed?
I think so. I think because of they're not 16 different actions. I use management information as the best example. You know, one piece of work could easily
could go 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So you have confidence that by March they'll all be moved to green and complete?
That's probably more of a question of management of myself, but we were going on the status at that time, and I've got the status. If nothing's happened, which obviously I don't know if anything's happened.
Okay.
I wasn't unduly concerned at the time of doing this, which possibly answers your question.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for David at all? The only thing I've obviously got is, obviously there are a number of outstanding ones as we've said on there, and again that confidence around them. Obviously you said that quite a number of them are systems based. Do we think the systems that are there that you're seeing are doing what we need them to do in that background, and are you seeing the progress through those systems so you can see that those, you know, have they moved forward in terms of system based transactions and things like that you're looking at to a point where you think then there will be deliverable at a point, or are you seeing it further behind?
And neither, because we don't see the system.
You don't see the system.
We're seeing them at one point, and then a few months later, we'll know.
That's right.
Angela,
I was going to say, do you want to cover those? Thank you.
I think the main thing, and on management information and some of the external grant management, like I said, they were based around a system delivery that we were working on. When we've looked at them, they're actually processed that was given a system as a resolution for them, which wasn't right. It was making sure that we had the processes that would go on to feed any system. So, you know, we're looking at the process first and looking at working with TIA and looking at the actions that we're given actions on the back of the feedback with a system resolution when it actually should be a process. Because it doesn't matter where the system is, so we want to remove that piece and focus on making sure our processes and our reporting's in the right manner and what's needed for everybody, not relying on that system. So that's been quite a shift, because there was a few delays with what we were working on, and now when we've looked at it against our requirements, we're like I say, we're going back and focusing on our processes rather than the actual tool to deliver. So that's been one of the main areas, and we've just had a external grants management as well, and we've made that clear in that audit, because again there was a lot of history in the system, so I'm trying to take that away and say, you know, it's on process rather than the physical system.
And just picking up the other point that was asked of David about the end of March delivery dates that was raised, is that something, I think it was more a question that was in for the operational side?
Absolutely, I've got quite a comprehensive action plan that sits behind it. There's a lot of moving parts around it as well, you know, with the monitoring, the performance side of it and how that feeds. But we've got quite a few projects that will jointly feed into these actions that are all due to complete at the end of March. So there's a lot of confidence there.
Thank you. And the only question I had was, obviously there's one on there that's been outstanding is the disaster recovery side of things. I'm assuming the disaster recovery plan itself is all current and up to date, is that correct? And this is just the cards and the background to that, but there isn't an issue as such with the actual plan that's in place?
No, and I probably need to look at that, because when the update says about the January
it says end of January, so that was my concern, as the date on it, that was all.
Yeah.
And obviously that's passed, so.
Yes, it has. I'll take that back to our operations manager and just make sure that either it's happened or it's updated.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions from anybody on that report? No. Thank you, Angela, and thank you, David, for that. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 9, which is the external audit report. Jo, are you starting off on that one? Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a little deja vu because we did this yesterday, didn't we, for STDC committee as well, so apologies if for members of the public it's a bit repetitive. So obviously we're not meeting the statutory backstop date. That is not great. So I'll leave with that one. And I would say we did everything we absolutely could to meet that statutory backstop date. I think in terms of background to this, obviously since I've been in since last August, we've been on a fact-finding mission. We knew that the finance team, EY, had helpfully said that, you know, there's capacity issues, and then in November extended that to capability issues. So there's always a challenge when you come into a new team working with permanent people, in terms of assessing those skills gaps and where, you know, you have a general comment that there's an issue about capacity and capability, but what you don't know is where that is. So there's certainly for the first couple of months, it's assessing the team, trying to understand exactly where we are with everything. And I think as that organically evolved in terms of an investigation piece, I think, and as I sort of brought resources in, I think the scale of the problem then became a little bit clearer, and the scale of the task and the challenges that we were facing were certainly much clearer then. So, having said that, we've had been transparent in our reports. We've had problems with the system itself. So if we look back at those years, the finance system wasn't being used as it should be being used. It wasn't being properly maintained with everything going through the ledgers. Some of it was. Some of it was being maintained on spreadsheets, and some of those spreadsheets had links to working papers, and the links didn't work, and some of them had hard-coded numbers in there. So I know EY already raised this, but certainly in terms of the sort of the accounts and the record keeping back in those early years, it's been difficult for us to piece things back together. That doesn't actually mean the information wasn't there, it's just we've had to piece it back because also we've had changes in key personnel. We've had 2 senior finance people leave at short notice without any handovers to people coming in. That is incredibly challenging. So if you don't have everything in the finance system, if you don't have really easy documents to locate and records to locate, and you're not getting handovers with people, so I can bring people in, if they've got nobody to speak to have a handover, it makes it even more of a challenge. So I think, as we've come in and as we brought more resources in, we then realised we needed more resources. So we brought some resources in October, we brought 2 new resources in October. Unfortunately, the Group Financial Controller left then in October. And so you've got a situation where we've 2 new resources in, and then we've got a key person that's left the organisation. Actually did in December, but she was unfortunately unwell from October, so she went off on short notice. So bringing 2 new resources in, I think it then became quite clear that we needed another financial accounting resource, and that's where we've been quite light in terms of the resources and capabilities. And when I came in, the finance team structure was very flat. I think I mentioned this to the committee before, but the finance team structure was very flat. There was no hierarchy, and there was no differentiation between the finance team, between the 3, I call them the 3 key functions within finance. One is financial accounting, one is financial management, and one is sort of the treasury side of things. That's the three functions for us which are really relevant. And those are bog standard. So financial accounting and financial management are bog standard in any organisation. We didn't have that. We didn't have that in the structure. So again, it's trying to then build the team, working with existing permanent people, bring in resources, and to create that differentiation in the function. That can't be done overnight because you're working with existing staff, and you're trying to do that, and I think take people on a journey with you. I think is probably the phrase I would use. So as you bring resources in as well, you then identify, as I said, there's more issues, or there's more things that need to be sorted, or there's more challenges. So I think what I didn't want, I think we spoke about this informally, didn't we? But the external audit report sort of says, there's still these matters that haven't been addressed. We are addressing these things, but I think in terms of the foundations, there's been more to do in terms of pulling together and fitting the jigsaw back together to get a set of accounts over to Claire and Mark, which are a set of accounts that hang together, are accurate, the notes do match the main primary statements, there are working papers to support those balances. That we have managed to achieve by the backstop date. By the deadline with which EY asked us to submit things in order to make the backstop date. What is fair, I think, from EY's perspective, is some of the material queries that were raised. We still needed to do some work on that, and it was a bit of I suppose it was a judgment call on my part. We either didn't send the accounts in at all and not attempt to meet the backstop date, or we send them in but say we're still working on those material things, and that's the avenue and the route that I took, so that we had some chance of meeting the statutory backstop date. Would I do it any differently? No, I would not. I'd probably still do the same thing, because actually at least Mark can see, with his team, can see the progress that we've done, and Mark does now have a set of accounts and an integrated workbook and tracked all the changes since July, and so there has been a significant amount of progress that's been made. And also, just from the committee perspective, we have got working papers now. Now we've had to collate those working papers from various different sources and piece it back together, but by and large we do have all the material items now. We absolutely have those working papers. But what we now need, and what we've now recognised in further discussions since the 16th and the 19th, when is we've met with Mark and the team, my team's met with them, and we now understand the nature of those queries in a bit more detail. So originally we had some high level understanding, but we drilled down a bit further with Mark and the team. Mark was super helpful for us to get a real understanding. And we've agreed really that what we need is expert advice now. So we'd already engaged Grant Thornton actually. I think you mentioned one of the IFRS 16 matters. They were already engaged prior to this last year. So we'd already engaged Grant Thornton, but what we're now doing is expanding their scope a little bit just to get that independent technical assurance that we're confident that how we've accounted things is correct. And I think Mark would say at this stage, not necessarily saying they are materially wrong or there are errors in the way that we've accounted for them. Sometimes it is application to unique situations, so we've got some very complex arrangements and then you have to apply accounting standards to those complex arrangements. These aren't usual public sector arrangements, and so the usual public sector technical people are going to struggle because they are very unusual. That's why we think it's sensible to get the external technical advice. I'm hoping, and I know Mark and Claire are working really well, collaboratively with us now, in trying to conclude that we may not have met the statutory backstop date, but we are trying to conclude them now as quickly as possible thereafter. So we're not going to wait for the next, we'll obviously get a letter from the Secretary of State because we haven't met the statutory backstop date. I think that'll be a risk to anybody or to Tom. And we're not going to wait to see when the next statutory, because they no doubt will announce the next statutory backstop date, for which we're due to complete by. We're not putting it off that far. We are going to try and conclude these as soon as possible. In terms of TDCA, there are some material matters which we have already addressed anyway, but we just need to bring Mark up to speed on kind of our assessment of those things. But for those, there is one particular matter that I absolutely need Grant Thornton to be involved in. But the reason I'm saying that it is just one. So once we've got their advice back on that, I'm meeting with Grant Thornton on Wednesday. I'm meeting with Grant Thornton on Wednesday with my technical person that came in October. So we are hoping that, fingers crossed, we will get a resolution to that material matter. And that's that and one other that could potentially impact on the finances. Other than that, some of them are presentational and accounting adjustments. Still material, but more accounting adjustments.
Thank you, Joe, for all of that. And I just want to, before we move on to any questions or comments for anybody, just if people haven't realised that Theo was online. Theo, I don't know if you just missed. Yeah, a lot of people won't have met Theo, and I just wondered if you just want to introduce yourself in your context in the local authority.
Hi, sorry, I'm Theo Lowell. I am deputising for Joe when she's not here, and I've come from different local authorities coming in to look at all these accounts that you're talking about and all the challenges that we've been facing. So yeah, we're trying to, it's more like a jigsaw in my opinion, and we're just trying to piece it together and not finding a certain, piece wouldn't make everything work together, and that's what we're trying to do, and hopefully we'll get there pretty soon, sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. And Theo, you're the interim Deputy Section 73 officer, aren't you, as part of that role? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions at all or comments on what Joe has presented there? Councillor Walker?
Yeah. Firstly, I very much welcome the getting the independent opinion. I think that's a really good idea in Grant Thornton body. I'm concerned about, and I would like to know what's been put in place in order to make sure it doesn't happen again. That people leaving causes the problem that the people taking over can't then just take over. I mean, you would not expect to have some sort of hand on it. You would think that there would be, the information would be there on the systems, TTS systems, so that people would, who are qualified in their field, would be able to follow on for that person. Because for the future, we will hopefully be able to recruit people, but they might leave. They might be not be charged for a handover. Somebody could go off sick, what happens if somebody goes off sick and you can't do a handover when somebody's off sick? So I think that's a really, really concerning point that hasn't just affected one member of staff leave but another. And I want to know what is being put in place to make sure that if somebody leaves in the future, we wouldn't have the same predicament.
Thank you. Do you want to come back to it? Yeah, I think, Tayo, if you do want to come in on anything, please do. I think, so absolutely, you know, it is the absolutely right question to ask, and I think it's a valid one. The assurance I can give from where I'm sitting today is that Tayo has been an absolute breath of fresh air, and in terms of the system and ensuring that, you know, that system is working really well, the finance system is fully up to date. Tayo's already got a plan, she's data cleansing, she's doing all sorts of things. We'll need to make sure when the accounts are signed off, all the open balances are correct. So what Tayo's main mission is to make sure that everything we need from a finance is now in the ledger. So all the open balances are correct. So we hope that the ledger will be there. So the core financial information, some of which we've struggled with at the moment, that will be there. And I think that you're on a mission with that one, Tayo, aren't you, to make that happen. The second thing that we're doing is we are creating filing structures now, which we didn't have, some very orderly finance folders. So anyone coming in should instinctively be able to go in there now. So, you know, if you go in there now for the financial accounts, you'll see the financial accounts themselves, and then there'll be various files that support all of those. So that's a really important thing to do. It sounds quite admin-y, but it's really important. If you've got your filing structure right and logical, then anyone coming in can take it over. I think the other thing that we've done for all the material transaction arrangements, this goes for SCDC, somebody will in there, I've asked everybody to write a file note on those material arrangements and transactions and how they've been accounted for. And what we're going to have is a permanent audit file, a bit like EY will have, a permanent audit file where those explanations are now filed and maintained. So there should not be the problem that we've had, which is just trying to understand what the arrangement is before we even account for it, which is what we've had to deal with. So now, anyone coming in, the filing system will be logical, because everything is filed, you know, online. It will be logical, we don't do paper anymore, but it will be filed logically online, and there will be this, at the top, there will be a permanent working paper file, and all the material arrangements will be explained in there. The other thing I think, which is probably relevant, is that certainly for this year, and at the moment, you know, looking forward to next year, there are no new, complex, unusual arrangements or anything out of the ordinary that a combined authority would do. That will make life a lot simpler for the year end, because it will be back to almost business as usual, which is our devolution fund money in, our grant funds in, and then our delivery of the services against those. So the unfortunate thing is for 23, 24, 24, 25, those are the years that have not had the audits, and I think there's a disclaimed opinion for the year before as well. So the last full audits in 21, 22, plus these across the group, it's a half a dozen or so material transactions and arrangements happened in those years. So once we've done the catch up, once we've cleared those down, hopefully there's not an awful lot more to hand over in terms of that corporate knowledge of the difficult stuff.
It's always difficult to talk about systems when you're not looking at them, you're not using them yourself, isn't it? So is it the case that the problem arose through there not being like systems in place as opposed to people not using the systems properly? Because if it was the latter, and I'm not wanting to go back over previous staff members, but if it was the latter, then is something being put in place in instructions, like processes that are given to the relevant staff to make sure that they follow those processes correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to hand over to Tayo actually, because she'll give a bit of meat on the bones to what's being done.
I was just thinking Tayo might not always be here. And
what's
put in place needs to be key to the future when you're not.
Just before I bring you in, Tayo, so what we did, and actually we did this a good few months ago now, what we did was we pulled together the list of, in fact it's part of our organisation improvement plan, that we report through to the Investment Improvement Advisory Board. And
what we did for them is we pulled the list of all the key finance processes together. We've done an assessment of those key finance processes, and we've now put improvement and actions in place to improve each one of those key finance processes, which will include documentation of the end-to-end process. Teo, do you want to come in on anything else, just in terms of the system and what you found?
Okay, in terms of coming onto the system, one of the things is a lot of things are not on the system, they were not, and some of the things that were in the system were in as a figure. So you see 1 million, what does it mean? We have no understanding. Without having the history, we don't know what that figure is doing or what it's trying to do. And those are the things we had to go around and trying to find out what they are. Now we're putting things in place to make sure everything is in its right places. Now the team knows to use the system, so we're using the system a lot more. Everything has to go through the system now, and we're doing reconciliation. We've got monthly reconciliation and some weekly, just to make sure things are always in the right places, and therefore, it's cleansed, we know everything is in its right place, and therefore the year-end would be much better. And like Joe said, some of these complex things are not happening again. It's happened already. We just need to know how to deal with it. And once it's been dealt with, we then can use the knowledge we've learned from here to do going forward.
But I think, just in terms to follow and add to that, I think to answer your question, I think there has been, or you've certainly found issues with the configuration of the system, so in terms of the coding structures and the hierarchies. And so you're having to do a system reconfiguration almost, as well as...
Yes, we are reconfiguring the system. We're creating new codes because we didn't have enough codes, and some of the codes are not relevant, so we're cleaning all those out and literally trying to get a new chart of account for TDC and everybody else, so that then that would be what we're going to be using going forward.
Thank you for that, Teo. Thanks, Joe, for that update. Any questions or comments from anybody? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just one more. Have we given a date when we will have it complete then? So you said we've missed the backstop date.
Yeah.
What is the next deadline that we're working to?
When's the next committee meeting?
It's in there.
It's in May. So yesterday, provisionally at STDC, we did agree, I think it was agreed 19th of May for the committee, and we're going to do
21st of May.
21st of May. So I think if I can do what I've signed up to doing, which is resolving the material queries by the end of March, which actually does sound like way, but actually we're almost in March, but if I can do that by the end of March, and again, some of it's within my control, some of it isn't, so it depends on what GT says and how quickly they can come back on some of these matters. But if we can do that by the end of March, then I think Claire's comfortable that the May date, a late May date, if you're available on that date.
It's already in the diary.
Sorry. That's what we'll aim for.
And have all of the submissions now been made, so it's now just on EY to do the questions and the queries? Has everything been submitted?
We haven't submitted the 24-25 account, mainly because we knew it wasn't going to hit a statutory backstop date then, and they were going to go in, and actually there didn't seem much point because some of these transactions are happening in 23-24, so we thought, right, let's just pause. They've been restated and they are ready to submit, but there's not really much point in submitting them until we've now resolved these queries, just in case there's any knock-on effect. But they're done, and they were worked on for many months, so they are done. And that's why the IFRS 16 work had already been commissioned as a result of that review, because IFRS 24-25 is when the IFRS 16 came into effect. So it's definitely work's been done, but there's no point in putting them over to resolve these queries, because you only want to get the final set, we've got a set we're going to change.
So just to understand, so we haven't, not everything's sent into EY, so we don't yet know all of the questions that are potentially due to come back. Is March a realistic deadline if we don't know the queries that haven't come back yet?
Very similar thing. So if I go back a little bit in time, kind of when we started the audit work last summer, one of the things we did before the audit was paused was look at the accounting papers, working papers behind the big issues, and because we hadn't done a lot of audit work, when I say big issues, I'm relying on the ones that officers told us these are the kind of the key judgments within the accounts, etc. Those gave rise to a number of detailed queries, a mixture of explain the basis for how you apply the accounting standards to these, which is the technical points that Joe's going to, and some more kind of, what I would say, quality issues, you know, sort of demonstrate to us how workings are consistent with underlying agreements and how information flows into those workings. Those comments were provided. Joe and her team, when they've been working through the updated accounts, I would describe a lot of what that work has been done as the foundations of the financial governance. It's kind of, you know, being able to tie through your accounting ledger through to your accounts, because that's something that was difficult before. And a lot of that benefit we would hope would come through in what we see in future audits, but when you just get a set of accounts, you don't see a lot of that, if that makes sense. What we have done is received the 23-24 accounts, gone back on, so Joe and her team set out all of the changes that have been made since the original version we saw on these. So we looked at those changes, we had a couple of queries on those, not loads, but the details in our report that we've gone back to Joe and her team on. Joe and her team are still looking at those queries that we originally raised on the big issues, and then what we'll get next is an updated set of accounts which includes the resolution and accompanying kind of responses on those big issues. At that point, that should allow us to be able to kind of close it off. What we need to do from an audit perspective to get to the issuance of the opinion is, because we are disclaiming, we're not going to go to the level of detail in these that we would if we were kind of trying to issue a clean opinion, but we need to be comfortable enough that there isn't a material misstatement, because even in a disclaimer scenario, if you kind of have reasonable grounds to think there's a material misstatement, that could impact your audit opinion. So we need to get to a point where we can see that the things we had some concerns about originally have been addressed, and that might be just explanations from Joe and the team to get us comfortable. It doesn't mean adjustment, or it might be an adjustment. Kind of, that's the bit we just need to understand and close off.
Okay.
I think that work needs work through and basically do that needs work through in 24, 25. I think we're still waiting for the root financial statements for TBCA, but again, until you've sort of bottomed out the main single entity, there's probably not much point submitting the group to us, but we are still waiting for the group statements.
Sorry, but apologies if I've misunderstood. Are we saying that May is the 24-25 final as well then?
Yeah.
But you still haven't got 24-25 yet?
We haven't, but it's based on the 23-24.
Claire and Mark are not doing any work now until we're sorted and we've
I guess my challenge back is, do we generally feel at the end of March, if you haven't even done the detail on 24-25 is realistic?
So end of March for me to have resolved the queries.
Yeah.
End of, I suppose, end of April, early May for Claire and the team to have reviewed.
I also,
but if you don't know what those queries are.
So if I can get at I think the point you can get is, what I would say is, it's not a different set of queries. Because what it really is those big accounting issues, as Joe said, a lot of them kind of were new in 22-23, so they've never really been looked at in detail from an audit perspective. Once you understand the way they work, that flows through both years, and indeed the restatement of 22-23 that might need to happen as well. So I think it's the same set of queries covers both financial years. I'm not expecting we'll have a whole different list for 24-25.
Okay, that's positive, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Any other questions or comments?
Just on the Thornton report, where will that go apart from two officers? Will it come to this committee?
The Grant Thornton report.
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking you're Grant Thornton. Don't apologise. Sorry. No, it wouldn't come to the committee. I have to be careful because sometimes these documents have to be. It might come to the committee in a confidential.
Chair, I would like to request that I think that if external assurance has been sought, I think it's something that's of interest to this committee.
Yeah.
If there's something that's confidential that needs taken out, that's fine. But I think it's relevant to this committee.
Yeah.
There's some real concerns raised, and we need that external assurance that things are being addressed.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, no objections to that at all. I was just thinking the fact that usually when they issue those things, it's for our purposes only, and you can't use it for anything else. I don't think that there is a problem actually with publishing it. So yeah, we'll.
I think the interest of transparency goes for the committee and the public chair.
I mean, they will be very technical, but I think that's relevant really.
Yeah.
We'll see how technical the queries are.
Thank you. Are we happy to have that come back to the committee? Like I say, if it needs to be in a confidential paper, then it can
or ideally have the confidential stuff taken out so it's more open and transparent.
That's what I was suggesting.
Us having, I think we should avoid having things dealt with in confidentially unless there's some commercial interest or something like that. So
I agree.
Sorry, so the only danger with that though is if it's a very, very technical financial document, it's not so much the relevance of the technicality, it's more the substance behind it. I think that would be as much use to the committee as the technical side of it. Because I'm guessing, reading from what you're saying, is it's the technical, how we've accounted for something, but it's more the fundamental transaction or the principle of the transaction that I think would be helpful. So, I mean, by all means share the technical document, but it could be a level of detail that's too far.
Yeah.
It's
the principle of the transaction, I think, would be the useful part.
It's the principle of the assurance that I personally want. I don't think we need to get involved with lots of technicalities, but we need, if we can have some independent assurance that things are being put are in place as they should be, that would be really
I think, just for clarity, I think from what you're saying, Councillor Walker, I'm not sure if that's, I don't think that's what we're asking Grant Thornton to do. I think we're asking them to look at transactional, some sort of transactional details. We're not asking them to review these accounts or give an opinion on
not on the accounts, but
it's only specific transactional pieces.
The work that they've been asked to come to do. No, they're not doing it on the accounts.
They're not going to give us a whole opinion or anything.
But they've been asked to come in to give some assurance, and I would like to know that assurance has been given.
So, what I'm just thinking how I can help with this. I think what I might suggest is that what we do is we bring to a company that we bring an explanatory note.
That would be helpful.
From myself, which sets out what the arrangement was. So what is the arrangement? How did we originally account for it? And if we need to make an adjustment, what adjustment has now been made and why? I think that would be super helpful for everyone, and I'll do that.
I've no objection to that, Chair, but I think that we need to grant the independent opinion on that also. It's not just written by TDCA officers.
Anybody else, any comments on that?
Just having been through more authority where we've had independent opinion on things, it's helpful that the opinion that I understand it's not an independent opinion on the accounts, but if they've been brought in to look at things, that they give some assurance that things are being resolved.
Yeah, I mean, my overview will say what the technical advice has been, but they will then append it so you can actually see that what I've said mirrors what's in the report.
I think what Councillor Walker is actually saying there is correct. It just helps with transparency. It helps everyone see what's going on, the workings and mechanics, not necessarily all the data that can be redacted or especially any sensitive information, but by being deemed to be asking technical advice of independent bodies, it mitigates a lot of the queries and questions that potentially could come our way. I think it's a really genuine point.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it would be useful certainly for the committee to see some of the detail around that. You know, I absolutely agree. And if Joe wants, you've got something, we can always liaise and then liaise with the committee in between if depending on when that comes back or whatever, and then I can always sort of send something around or whatever to just update as to where we've got. Obviously it's quite difficult at the minute because you haven't got to that point, so it's difficult to know how that's going to then map out, isn't it, in terms of you've obviously only just bringing them on board to do that. So
I was just saying there, Chair, I was just thinking to myself, maybe in the future meeting, if it wants to be part of the context, they could either join via Teams just to give a bit of context and just on that agenda item.
Yeah.
And then they can just go about their own business. They don't have to be involved in the whole meeting just to explain how they've got to their theories of thinking. I don't know if that's something that can be done.
I was going to say you could always ask and see, for Grant Thornton to do that. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments on the reports? No? I just want to just say, you know, that obviously we are in this position that we're in where we haven't got the sort of to the position where we would have liked to have been, but I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that has been done. I think it's, you know, to thank officers because there has been such a lot of work done in the background and the teams have really worked hard to get to that point. So, you know, to Joe and Theo and the rest of the colleagues in the background they've done so much technical work that it's just been a lot of unpicking, unfortunately, to get to this point. And you know, some of the queries have been very sort of technical matters and looking at the systems and the ledgers, like you say, to just bring it all together takes such a lot of work, which I think it's just important that we recognise that there has been such a lot done, and that hopefully we're nearly there. So yeah, and thanks to everybody. And as I say, it is disappointing on our part, and I think Joe, you were just as disappointed as everybody that we didn't get to that point. But hopefully that, you know, in the future, once we've got these next couple, that we'll get them completed and finished. But yeah, just I think to pass on the committee's thanks for everybody for the work that they've done. I think thank you. Any other questions or comments on this report?
Yeah, sorry, I think just as a matter, I think Councillor Body raised it probably a while ago. At the point of entering these transactions, we didn't know obviously what we know now. I guess the safeguarders in the future are these types of actions likely to occur in the future? If they're not, fine, but if they are, do we need to have that kind of, the likes of Grant Thornton ahead of time to help with that?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. If there's any other technical or complex arrangements that are going to be in it, we will absolutely get the advice at the outset.
It's probably a learning point.
I was going to say,
Councillor Body raised it a long time ago, that how come we're in this position now? But I guess just future going forward, it will just safeguard us, hopefully not being in this position.
Yeah, I think you make a valid point. You know, I think it's always good to get that guidance, isn't it, for such technical matters, you know, so that we don't end up in this position again. No, that's it, isn't it? And I think sometimes you need that, don't you, just to sign things off, you know, in accordance with the technical experts at that point in time. So.
I guess our EY could probably help in the future before we commit to anything.
Yeah, no, I think you make a valid point there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this one, Tom? No, I think, can we just go back? I think what was the recommendations within it? Yeah, so they were all just there was recommendations points A to D, and they were all just to note the position where we're at. We all happy just to note those. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for that, and thanks for the updates there. I just want to go back over, sorry, on the agenda, because when we covered off item 8, there was another report attached to that, so I just need to go back to it. It was the assurance review, the procurement review. So I think it's on 8B on your actual agenda, so page 117. So we just need to cover that off. Angela, is that yourself?
It is, but I think I'll let David do this one.
That's fine, thank you very much. Apologies there, I missed that as we were going through. There was quite a lot in there.
I'm not offended.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, we've got a couple of reports. First one is our summary internal controls assurance report. Just gives a includes in the name a summary of the work we've carried out since the previous meeting. A couple of things to note in there. We just have to point out we haven't made any priority 1 recommendations. We haven't been advised of any frauds or irregularities since the previous meeting. The one report that has been issued as a final is procurement, which I'll go into in a second. The key findings from there are in Appendix A, page 114. And then in Appendix B, page 115. Again, this is as at the point of doing this report. This is the current status or proposed status. Things have moved on a little bit. So procurement was issued as final. Again, I'll go to that report in a second. Credit to payments has now also been issued as a final. That's on the 6th of Feb. Income and debtors completed vast majority of that work. The draft report will be due out very, very soon. External rank controls, which I mentioned earlier actually, that draft was issued on the 11th of Feb, so we've got a few more reports out since this. Anti-fraud and whistleblowing we're going to carry out in March. Mid-year follow-up, again we've already been through, and the year-end follow-up, week after next, 2nd of March. So things have moved on quite significantly since Appendix B was actually produced. And then Appendix C, we've got a few links to various reports, articles, briefing notes that are relevant to your sector that have again been issued since the previous meeting. So the links and the document should work. They'll either go through to an article on our website or external website or a document itself, a PDF document. So a little bit of light reading for anybody. We've got any holidays coming up, can we take on holiday? I'll pause there for any questions on that document before going on to the procurement. Okay.
Thanks, David. Any questions or comments on that one? No? Yeah, there's definitely a lot of reading there for people, isn't there? But it's good that we get that though, because it keeps us up to date and relevant with things that are moving forward in the sort of the wider context.
And you'll get one of these there for everybody.
Thank you for that.
So procurement, reasonable assurance, just the one recommendation, which is medium or about 2 recommendation. So within your procurement policy, it states that a, quote, form of tender should be signed for all direct awards, but that isn't current practice. So the recommendation is to align those two. So either amend your policy to take it out, or if the decision is to keep it in, then actually action it. Yeah. Got key strategic findings on page 118. Obviously pull out the key issues, good and bad. And then obviously the body of the report's got the details in there. So again, I should take any questions on that report.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments for David? Yeah, Councillor, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, it states at the front part that risk hasn't changed, that there's no exposure to risk, but the procurement document states that it's still in review, the strategy's in draft, that there's no KPIs currently in place, they're still being developed. So how, surely that in itself could expose us to greater risk, so the report itself saying there is no risk when everything's not all in line. Just some clarity on that's possible to understand the risk exposure potentially from the implementation of the procurement policies as they go forward.
So is that from the covering page?
Yes, from the cover, and then within the report itself, I can't remember what page it is. It's got the bullet point about the procurement. I think it's 123 in our agenda packs, or 124. It says the procurement still being considered and the strategy still being reviewed and drafted. So obviously that would impact surely the risk going forward if it's still not an active. There's the potential of risk.
Yes, yeah. That's, I can't find the point itself, but yeah. So that's the risk scoring of TVCA itself.
Yes. Sorry, I think it's 124 on our agenda packs. Second paragraph from the bottom.
Yes, it pulls out the KPIs. But, where's the bits like that? You can never see when looking at the bit about the risk scoring not changing.
So it says on the very start of this agenda item, it obviously it highlights that risk hasn't changed. So there's no risk identified.
So,
but obviously,
I guess that's a question. Is that a question for?
A question general to the committee, just in the sense of surely if we've not got everything implemented within the report, how can we say that risk is unchanged when we've not actually got everything in place as of yet?
Yeah, so just for clarity, it says in the document, management confirmed these KPIs are still being considered as a strategy, is still being reviewed and drafted, and as such these have not been reported upon. Is kind of the bit that you mentioned, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so at this moment there's been no risk raised from the procurement team. The report was generated in January, so I'm not sure if there's anything to come through, but we'll take that away and review it with the procurement team to see if that has impacted the risks. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Any questions or further comments for David? Thank you for that report. Thank you very much. And yeah, we got there in the end with it. Thank you. So back to the order of the agenda. So we should be on to agenda item number 11, which is the information governance update, which is yourself, Jeanette. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is presented to you for noting, but clearly, I'll take questions. I think paragraph 3.2 is probably the paragraph that contains most information. It's in the packets, page 187. So there were, and we're looking at freedom of information requests received, complaints, and also subject access requests and data protection matters. So in terms of freedom of information complaints, there were 45, of which 37 were responded to within the statutory period. Now, although I've only been here for a month, I understand that that's a vast improvement. So I'd like to draw that to your attention. And in terms of those 45 freedom of information requests, they contained 156 questions. So there's more that behind that number. We received, there were no complaints during October and December that were referred to us from the Information Commissioner. However, there was one complaint that must relate to an earlier period that the Information Commissioner considered and upheld in the complainant's favour. So we are learning from that one. There was one member code of conduct complaint, and that was not upheld. There were 2 complaints, and there were no data protection breaches that we were aware of, and there was 1 subject access request. And I'd welcome comments or questions from members of this committee.
Thank you, Jeanette, and thanks for that report. I appreciate, you have only been in the role for a very short period of time, so, I've obviously met with you now as chair of the committee separately from this meeting, and there is a lot of work being done, and again, thank you, because I know progress is very swiftly being made in the background, so thank you for what you've done to date. It's making a massive change and influence on the teams for that. Thank you. Was it Councillor Walker just saying?
Yeah, it was just a query on paragraph 3.3, but you referred to there was 2 written complaints which you responded to. Obviously, without breaching any confidentiality, were those resolved, or are they still? That said, been responded to, but have they been concluded? If they were upheld, was there any learning out of it? I know that you said it was one referred back, but it would just be useful to know what the outcome was, or if they're still ongoing.
I think that's really helpful. What I can do outside of this committee is to brief members on the nature of those complaints and learning and what actions are taken as a result.
Thank you. Likewise, Jeanette, it'd probably be useful just on the ICO one as well, particularly, I think, because especially if it has then been overturned in favour of, it would just be good to get an understanding of, without obviously any personal details or anything, but the nature of that and the outcome of that, and again what measures we've now put in place so we don't get to that point again. So I think that one would be really useful as well, just for some detail behind that particular one. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Yes, Councillor, thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Just very briefly, I think it would be really useful to see the mechanism, especially around the learning from previous mistakes. That would be really useful. And as well as that, I appreciate that 7 of the responses were outside the statutory time frame. That's rough on my math, it's about 15%, isn't it, out of the 45. So again, what are we doing to develop that to ensure that we're adhering to all the time frames? I think that would be really useful for us to be able to have that wider understanding.
And what I can say in relation to late responses and what are we doing about that, we have, as I understand it from my colleagues, a surge of FOIs concerning financial matters, and I think the financial team were obviously really busy. I want to use the word swamped, not really a technical term. And actually the team have fed back that since Teo has joined the organisation, and Teo hasn't been here very long, that actually the response rates to FOIs, particularly around financial queries, has improved significantly.
No, that's good.
But I can certainly report back to all members.
That's really good, thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette, and thanks, Teo, for the work that you've done. Obviously, it's making a big difference to that as well. I think the only thing I would say is, obviously, as well, Jeanette, is if there's any, and I've asked and sort of said before about the timescales. Obviously, it tells us how many are outside, but it doesn't tell us how long they've been outside of that for. We could have ones that are a year old for all we know, or whatever. So we've got no context. So I think just some relevance behind that would be really useful, so that we can see how far back they go and how far they are behind that actual timescale. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, thank you. I think it was just to note the contents of the report. Yeah, it was, yeah. So we're all happy to note the contents, yeah. Thank you, thanks for that, Jeanette, thank you. So agenda item number 12, on to risk management update, and Angela, yourself, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to take the report as read, but just a few changes from the last one. So we've been working internally on, and I know I mentioned this yesterday, so sorry for the repetition. We're working on strengthening the risk management system. Now, there's no change to the actual risks. It's just we're looking at where they sit in the register. So I think everything that's been put in the past probably. I've identified a few things that might sit in an operational register that was shown in here, and so we're doing some work outside of here to strengthen that. We did get asked to show some updates. I think the next one will show a very clear update of where we were today versus where we will be in the next one. And some of the high risks, just to touch on, obviously the organisational capacity and capability, I think Joe's covered most of that. But there is some workforce development strategy also running in parallel with that for the whole organisation. Monitoring evaluation, so we're just undergoing the devolution gateway review, so there's a lot of learnings from that. So when we come into how we evaluate and how we look at value for money through them evaluations, there's again a lot of strengthening and improvement work on there. Working very closely with MHCLG and a lot of the other combined authority groups as well to take best practice and learn from that as we move forward. And then there's a few of the finance, like I say, Joe's probably touched on all of them. So going forward, we will work again to strengthen this report, give you what you need to be able to, see where we are, where the progress is, and I'll welcome any questions.
Thank you, thanks for that, Angela. Any questions or comments? Yes, thank you.
Just on the organisational capacity and capability, so do you have, for the key roles, is the succession planning in place?
So I do believe that's part of the workforce development strategy, so that is one of the key parts of the plan that sits within the best value notice in the organisational improvement plan. So yes, that is being looked at.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela, for that. Any questions? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from that one, obviously a score of 20 is very high.
Yes.
Within that one, it's obviously concerning. Do we have a target that we want to try and meet, and is there a time scale? I appreciate it might be part of other processes going on, but do we have a kind of time scale that we're looking to try and reduce that risk and bring that figure right?
Yes, of course. So there's quite a detailed plan that runs behind that with the workforce strategy. So and I do need to get an update on that because this is a summary of actions, but obviously there's a lot of detail behind here. I think what I can do for the next one is give some timescales of where we see as we're moving towards the residual risk and how we plan to get there.
That'd be useful, and if it's possible to have like a very generalised overview of the steps at the moment, just as an interim period before the next meeting as to what steps are being taken. I think to highlight those, that process would be quite useful, I think, for the committee, just to understand exactly the road that we're on to try and reduce that risk and the process in place as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because there is a little bit of duplication here, obviously with the organisational plan, but we do capture it on the strategic level. So I can definitely reference and make sure it's clear, because that's one thing we are focused on at the moment, making sure that there's robust mitigation, whether it be part of the best value notice or an individual organisational plan that gets us to where we need to be. Well, yeah, I can definitely share that.
That's really useful, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker? Yeah,
Thank you. Under the financial sustainability and affordability, and the update says that the draft budget provided Cabinet in January demonstrates a balanced position across the medium-term financial plan period. Budgets are balanced, otherwise, as I understand, otherwise you couldn't set it. So then that refers to multi-monitoring, quality support, etc. So, but why is it then a 15?
I'd have to look at the scoring behind that.
You could do.
Yeah,
because it's a red.
Because
it sounds like to me that sounds a red means there's a major risk. If there's it's good that there was a balanced budget approved, but that's not exactly earth-shattering news, because that's what we're trying to do. Monthly monitoring, quarterly reporting, I mean that's something I would expect to be in place anyway. So if things are okay under the treatment plan updates, why is it, my question would be, why is it still red and why is it still 15? So I would like that, to be hopeful to have that information. Just thinking of some of the things that I've, and I'm not going to repeat because it's a bit since I read the papers, but some of the things that were raised in the cabinet regarding loans, etc., and them not being paid, which I would have thought would be a concern in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take that away, Councillor Walker, and I'll feedback on that one.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Angela. Any other questions or comments on those risks? Thanks, Angela, for the update, and it is good to have that bit more narrative within that report, and I think it makes it easier for us to see that progress and where things are at. So thank you for the updates on that and the additional sort of detail that it now provides us with. So thank you, because I know that was something that was asked for previously, so thank you for that. Are we happy just to, I think it was just a note, wasn't it, this one?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, happy just to note the report, and yeah, thank you very much, thank you. And yeah, if you could just feedback on those couple of things, that would be great. Yeah, thank you very much. Apologies all, so we're going back a little bit again. Sorry. So I think there's just a little update from agenda item number 10. I think, Joe, was it yourself who just was it just to, on the progress update?
On the auditor's annual report?
Yeah, I think it was, and I know, Claire, you said there was some details before, but yeah.
So the reason this has been included, I probably shouldn't mention this one, but the reason this has been included is because we met with the chair, and the chair expressed, I think, some concern that the draft auditor's annual report went in November with references to the Tees value and recommendations. And normally what would happen in that draft report, you would get specific recommendations. And in that draft report, we would endeavour to put draft management responses in time for the November committee that just went. As there were no specific recommendations, we didn't have an opportunity to put management comments in, and the recommendations were more general related to the Tees value review and the external auditor's statutory recommendations. And what Councillor Porter quite rightly as chair said was that what this committee hasn't had is any kind of update or response from officers in relation to those recommendations made in the draft auditor's annual report in November. We've included it today just as a sort of reference to remind you what was in there. It's not for required to present today because we said that was done in November. But and obviously the responses that are in there in the report have been collated across the organisation because they are organisational matters, not necessarily finance matters. So we thought it was helpful, at Councillor Porter's suggestion, to include this.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm just trying to get to the point where it was at.
Give us a report.
I was going to say, I think it's not within that, is it?
It's not within the
Yeah, it was separate, wasn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought. I can't see it in there. Yeah, that's it. Just making sure, did everybody receive that? Yeah.
Is that the TVR and EY recommendations?
Yes, that's one. Yes, yeah.
It was in the pack,
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if people have got any questions or comments following the meeting, I think feel free to send them across, and they can be the queries can be asked at that point. And I think officers will be quite happy to come back to anybody with that. So if people do want to review feedback, then it was just obviously to note the report and the contents. But yeah, happy for anybody to send anything back either to myself or to officers as well. Thank you. So agenda item number 12 is the risk management update, and I think that's yourself, Angela, yeah? Oh no, that's what we've done, sorry. That's it, no. Yeah, no, that was the last one, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, no, that's... Yeah, any other comments? Yes, thank you.
So we did have our update report on there as well as our audit annual report, which we haven't touched on. And I don't think we need to go over the financial statements details because clearly Joe's been a lot of discussion about the financial statements, but it was just to flag to members that obviously we have our wider responsibilities around value for money as well, in consideration of the annual governance statement. So that is something that we will be considering before that May meeting. And when Joe has completed the work that her and her team are doing, we'll be thinking about actually what does that show. And as you just mentioned, we have the weaknesses already in our auditor's annual report, but we need to think about all that work that management have done. Is that indicative of any further weaknesses in the 24-25 financial year that we need to reflect on and work on? So this auditor's annual report will be updated when we complete our audit work. And as part of that as well, given the nature and talk about the uses of some of these matters, we will also consider about do we need to use further auditor reporting powers, but we can't conclude on that until management have been through and assess kind of what are the underlying issues in the reports and the statements. But it's just I'm conscious we didn't touch on that element of our responsibilities as we were talking about the accounts.
No, thank you, and thanks for that update, Claire. Does anybody have any other comments or questions or any other business before we conclude the meeting? Yeah,
just have one, I don't mean it to be a provocative question. Is there a recruitment and retention problem at TVCA, particularly within finance? Are we seeing the challenges of people, the churn of people coming in and out?
I think it's a really good question. I think when I spoke to my Section 151 colleagues from across the region, because we meet quite regularly, I think when they have a lot of sort of long-serving members, local members, but when they leave, they do equally have difficulties. And we obviously are competing against those for those resources. I think the telling time will be when we go out for the permanent recruitment. So I'm in the process now of just taking a revised structure through to ELT, and then we'll be going out shortly after that for recruitment. I think that will be an interesting one to see, because sometimes it shifts, the market shifts a little bit. But I think it's, yes, I think historically what I've been told is you've had problems. It would just be interesting to see whether we're still having problems going forward.
Thank you for that, Joe. Any other questions? Anybody? No? Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and thank you very much for our colleagues and those online. Thank you, Teo, for your attendance today as well. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.